Hello, friend, and welcome back to the Identity Glow Up podcast. It is me, your host, Paige Harper, and I am joined today by a very special guest, Arneen. So, she is actually someone who is all about helping people create a bigger, bolder, and more intentional life. And we actually met through a program that where we have the same coach together as well. And she is a certified life, love, and leadership coach, creator of the Thriving Love Method, and host of the Big Life podcast. After spending more than a decade helping people build successful careers, lead teams, navigate relationships, and better understand themselves, Arneen now empowers people to stop settling and start creating lives they are genuinely obsessed with. Her work combines leadership, psychology, neuroscience, relationships, and personal development to help people uncover who they truly are and become the person capable of creating the life, love, and success they desire. So I'm so excited for this conversation, and I know it's going to leave you thinking bigger, dreaming bigger, taking bigger action. And we're talking all about dating while building your empire, attachment styles, identity, feminine energy, and it's going to be incredible. So, welcome, Arneen.
Hello. I'm
Hello.
so excited to be jamming with you today.
Oh my
Hey,
gosh,
everybody.
it's going to be so good. And I actually was on her podcast, or we recorded a little while back, and we went off. We were actually supposed to record this podcast together at that time, and we talked too much. So we had to stop. We had to stop and reconvene at a different time because we talked way too damn much. So now we are back, and I'm so excited. So like I said, we are actually together in a program, and funny thing is we were in a different program together prior, and we kind of came we kind of came together like, hey, I recognize you. I know that name. So it's funny the way that life works. Sorry if you can hear my dog, by the way. He's going crazy at the moment. But diving right in. So I think a lot of women have been taught how to become successful, right? And I talk a lot about identity work and all of that, about becoming successful, but not necessarily like how to receive love and like not talking a lot about love on that end of things. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that we like I feel like there's a lot of talk about success right now, but the love conversation is not as high, at least not that I'm seeing. Maybe it's my algorithm, but why do you think that is?
Mm, that's such a good question. Oh, I mean, there are so many layers I think that can really go into this, but I think people are as curious as ever right now about what is going on in dating and what is going on with modern love, and simultaneously exhausted. They're single, right? And so we're seeing this culture bubble up around adversity to even trying right now, which is fascinating because it's it's coming from a place that a few years ago, a lot of people would have said that is the culture of avoidance and is coming from a lot of heartbreak and is coming from people who maybe aren't ready. And although all of those things are true, what we're actually seeing more and more of in the dating pool all around the world, by the way, I have data on this, so I can speak to this, is that people from all walks of life are actually finding it challenging. And people who are really successful in ways are actually finding it even more challenging, which I think is really surprising for a lot of people. I think a lot of people would not necessarily assume that or think
Mhm.
that. But I think for people who are really wanting to find something real and lasting and healthy and thriving, those are the people who are looking for exceptional love
Mm.
and really exceptional relationships in a very strange atypical time right now in the world of love and also in the world because there's a lot going on in the world that is obviously bringing up a lot for people, a lot
Mhm.
of circumstances changing, impacting people's lives. And so I would say that's what I'm seeing anyway.
So
And
do
so
you
that's
think that people that are successful, their expectations are just higher because they have, and not necessarily that that's a bad thing, but like, do you think their expectations are higher because they expect more from themselves and then they also expect more from a partner? Or do you think that they just have more focus on success and that's like the main drive? Because I know that also, women are getting married later and later, which there's nothing wrong with that. But women are getting married later and later. And also, like, I feel like being in relationships, like, longer and longer. I don't know. Maybe that's just my perspective, but why do you think that is that people that are successful are usually the ones that are kind of like on the struggle bus right now, it almost seems like?
Mm, yeah, I think that this has probably been a reality for a while, but I think what's happening right now is that more people are just being a little bit more open about why they're struggling and what they're struggling with. And so that becomes a topic of conversation, right? That becomes the stuff that we see on social media as what's so commonly recycled as like your dating vents or like, why is it so hard, especially in 2026? Like, I had someone, really spark up a really beautiful conversation with me not too long ago when I was in Australia. And one of the things I said to them, and I was like, this is going to be content for me, is that if you think dating is not going to be difficult in 2026, you are kidding yourself. And they were like, it's something in the air. I'm like, babe, it's 2026. It's not 2022 or 2023. Like, if you are, I guess a lot of people would be unknown to the fact that the dating landscape is evolving and changing, or has been over say, the last 3 to 5 years or so. It really has with dating apps. It really, really has, because the experience that people are having trying to look for love is more multi-dimensional than it's ever been, if you really think about it, with dating
Yeah.
apps and online dating. And then I think the two main things I would probably highlight is that there's a really huge aspect of high achievers, like a lot of the people that I work with, being so committed to their careers, being so driven, being so purposeful, that is the area of their life that takes a lot of time and attention. But I also think that there's actually a compatibility layer as well that almost seems invisible, because a lot of people don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to really have these conversations because they're not 100% in their awareness about what it actually is that is blocking them or preventing them, or even just slowing them down in a lot of ways when it comes to attracting in somebody who is right for them, who's
Mhm.
compatible for them. That's essential. And then there's that component of building healthy, thriving love, right?
Mhm.
So if we want to go out into the world and we're like, I just want a boyfriend and girlfriend, we can find a boyfriend and girlfriend.
Mhm.
We can probably find a husband or a wife, but it's like, where are the standards for your life? Like, do the standards for your life and love match the standards that you've created for your career and a
Mhm.
life that you've worked so hard to build? Because what I'm seeing is that what my students, for example, want is that they want their love life to match where they're at. Like, they want their love life to be above average, to be above what a baseline standard is, because the baseline standard is internet memes right now. For a lot of them, it's not, hey, I want to take my precious time and energy and invest into this, knowing how difficult it is right now to find people who are truly compatible. So that gets to be the conversation. And then
Mhm.
you mentioned something that also was important and I think relevant too, which is like, is it the standards conversation? Is it just that it actually is harder to find people? And so I say it's a blend of both, right? And then within that, there are multiple factors and variables that would go into one individual person having that come alive for them and be their reality, let alone hundreds and thousands, right? And
Mhm.
so I really look at it more from a person to person basis, because for me, especially being on the other side, mentoring through this, that feels like it's more healthy and more helpful and more of a productive conversation to have. But if the shoe was on the other foot, and a lot of the times it is, I've been in those shoes. I've been a very active dater. I've been a dormant dater. So I really have seen and experienced a lot in the dating scene as well. It's
Mhm.
like those seasons of our dating lives, especially with people who are building and actively building empires, companies, careers, the stakes are a little bit different,
Mhm.
because the rhetoric a lot of times is that eventually it's like one over the other. And
Mhm.
you can have both. And there's a lot of power in actually learning how to center and decenter the right things on your journey in love and understanding that you can literally have both. But this is this is just an area in life that is very nuanced. And so we have to be able to understand it that way too, right? And
Yeah.
be able to really accept that our journey to finding love that is so healthy and amazing and meaningful for us is going to be that too. And
Mhm.
for some people, it's their high school sweetheart. Like for you, for example, for some people, that's the story. And for a lot of other people, it's just more of a journey to go on before you find that.
Yeah. And I think, and I'm pretty sure you coach men and women, right? From
Hmm.
what, okay. But I think like from a woman's perspective, I could see where, especially if you're a woman that has seen success and having not even the standards of like the man has to also have success, but just like the man has to want something, has to have like some kind of passion or something. And I feel like sometimes that's missing nowadays. Maybe that's generalizing things, but also like having someone that's okay with your level of success. Like if you're dating and you're already successful, like finding someone that's okay with your level of success, especially as a woman that has seen success in her business or whatever that may be, and finding a man that's okay with that and not going to feel a certain kind of way about it. Because I have seen relationships where the men maybe don't make as much money as the woman does or something like that, and they have something to say about it, and they feel a certain type of way about it, and it's always like a dig under under their breath or whatever, which is obviously not a good thing. um, but I did not, I won't say I didn't grow up in the online dating world because I could technically, if I wasn't married, be in there right now. But I was lucky enough to meet my husband in high school. And as you said, and we've talked about this, but I was able to kind of like find someone, and we had our time where we weren't really dating. We didn't really date in high school. I just knew him in high school, and then we kind of got back together when I was in college. But I don't know how people do it. I don't know how people do like the memes and having to constantly having to constantly feed through all of these people and know which one is like the best one for them. And it's that sounds like horrible. That sounds horrible. What is so I guess I should have asked this first. Like, what do you coach your clients on? Like, what do you do with your clients? What's the main thing that you do? Do you help with
Yeah.
that or like dating profiles? I think I saw somewhere where you help with dating profiles. So what exactly do you do there?
Yeah, you probably saw my Instagram story where I was talking
Yes.
about it's off offering dating profile roasting.
Yes. The rage something or other. I forget what you called it, but the you were gonna roast him. That's what it was. Roast him, not rage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Roast 'em. Yeah, so absolutely happy to share that. So what I work with my clients on is I offer my signature program, Thriving Love,
Mhm.
and the program is really all about helping people journey through love, meet them exactly where they're at, but
Mhm.
we just catapult and elevate the shit out of their love life, with like just
Yeah.
layman's terms, straight up. I could just say
Yeah.
so many things about it, but the crux of the focus of the work that I do with my students and my clients is to really help them elevate in life and love in parallel, right? Like
Mhm.
to me, this is like it's not the same thing, but it is the same thing because the journey that you are going on is in parallel. And so what's so interesting with the work that I do with my students and my clients is that I work with high achieving men and women and days to to basically just completely own their story so far, exactly where they're at, and completely transform everything that they've ever experienced in life and love together that have created all these stories and narratives and maybe wounds and maybe it's childhood trauma, anything that is not serving them, right, on their
Mhm.
journey of finding, building, and sustaining exceptional love. That is the standard. That's the goal. So that's what I help them with. So
Mhm.
it's like we don't want surface level love. We want the exceptional love. So
Right.
if we want exceptional love, we're going to have to go on a journey that's probably a little bit atypical, really uncomfortable, and in that lies a lot of work around repatterning you as a human and how you function in love and therefore how you show up in love so that you can be the best possible human you can absolutely be in your future relationship, we are prepping you for that. And through your journey, you attract exactly who is meant for you.
Mm,
Because the journey that you're taking is just so, I know we talked about self-obsession. It's a little bit like you can bring that theme into it. It's like
hmm.
self-obsession in a really healthy way,
Yeah.
but laser focused in on your love life. So everything you can imagine under the sun that we need to work on, we uncover and we work on.
Hmm.
Attachment style, childhood trauma, releasing trapped emotions you didn't even know you had, doing work in the body, nervous system work. Like there's so much that we do in terms of the layers that we capture in the actual coaching and the mentorship.
Hmm.
But the overall goal is how can we really get you to have a love life that meets you where you are and elevates to your standards so that you are not shrinking and becoming less. And because hello, like a lot of people are, and that's why they're struggling right now, is because
Yeah.
they're feeling like in the compromise and the give or take, they're having to be smaller and they're having to shrink themselves to really fit into what is going on in the dating pool or what is going on in the climate to have something that essentially is a human right, but has somehow become so difficult to attain, you know?
Hmm.
And I think it's very politically correct to say a lot of things and for people to come across in a certain way. It's very different to then go into an experience with them and experience the person and realize actually wow, this is actually a lot more difficult than I thought
Hmm.
it was going to be. So the art of discernment is as well another thing that I teach that is a really, really powerful tool in helping people on their journey to having exceptional love. So, yeah.
I love that. And I love the exceptional love. Like I think that's so powerful because I think that's what everybody wants. And sometimes we settle for less, but I think one of the reasons that we settle for less is because of fear of if like running out of time or if we're going to be able to ever meet the right person or whatever that may be, but also like I don't know. I feel like you have to really love yourself. And obviously, I'm sure you talk about this in your programs. I think you were talking about that, but like you have to really, bring in the self-obsession factor. Like you have to love yourself. You have to treat yourself like you are the prize. Like you are the person. You are the person that like people should love you. And they're like you have to love every bit of yourself before I think that you can allow someone else to love you, especially in the beginning. And obviously, like things happen and there are things that like I pick myself apart sometimes. I think we all do, right? But you have to have somebody that's there that's like gonna lift you up, not be like, yep, you do need to work on that. Yep, that is something that is, you know what I mean? So I feel like really loving yourself first and foremost is so key. And I'm all about self-obsession. You know that. And my audience knows that. I love a little self-obsession moment. So like I'm okay with that. So, okay, question. Do you have, I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. Do you have, in the experience of you going through like dating profiles, I don't know how many you have gone through. Is there like one that stands out to you was just like the worst? And you don't have to name names, obviously, but is there like something that is just like the worst? I'm so curious because I've never had a
Oh
dating
my
profile.
gosh. Oh, there, you have no idea how much fun one of my friends and I have been having lately. She's also working in the space, and
Mhm.
we've been sending each other these hinge profiles of really muscular men in just putting themselves in like really deep situations that are not deep at all. Which is basically the last one I sent her was like this guy, he's really just like jacked up and he's
Mhm.
wearing these tiny briefs and the sun is shining, the sun's like almost setting. It's like that time of day where it's pre-golden hour. And for some reason, this guy, he makes a B-roll reel of him walking out of a cave and he has this like little pitch as his overlay on his B-roll reel. And it says something like 35, I'm ready to meet you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like this 15-second reel of him just walking out of this cave
Mm.
and looking out into the sun. And so, I mean, people are getting creative. I wouldn't say that's the worst. That's actually probably, I'm talking about it because it's like a higher tier of like the worst.
Yeah.
Those are really like ironic ones that we just laugh at, or like a really buff gym man who's like looking out at the sunset and he's quoting like Shakespeare, but then the rest of his profile is so not that. And it's like, I know you do not read a book. So,
Mhm. I
why is
kid
this
you
even
not.
happening? Like we have a lot of fun, you know.
I
But I
know you do
yes,
not read a book.
actually, because I've been swiping all around the world, and I think one of the worst ones definitely was I was I was in Vegas actually last year in summer, and I remember coming across this guy's profile, and it was so bad that I had to screenshot it and send it to a friend. And I was like, I am severely concerned for anyone who goes on a date with this man. He had this giant swastika tattoo,
Oh,
and
no.
he was in his bedroom, and it looked like he was an adult in a 14-year-old's bedroom who games all day and had this giant swastika on his wall. And he worshipped the devil and he wrote all about it on
Shut
his
up.
profile. And I was like, I've never seen
What
this.
kind of dating app were you on? Were
Oh,
you?
it was Bumble. It
Oh
was Bumble.
my gosh.
The most cutie app. That's my favorite one. But honestly, Paige, I was like, they're out there.
Wow. That's interesting.
They're
Yeah.
definitely out there.
Wow. That is so if a girl wants to find someone on an app to like be serious with, I'm so intrigued by this because, like I said, I've never been on an app. If like, what are the things that she should look for? Obviously, not the swastika. Obviously, not those kind of weird things. Maybe not a guy that's quoting Shakespeare walking out of a cave with the sunset behind him. But like, what are the things that they should be look? Because guys do stupid shit and they're kind of weird sometimes and they say dumb things because I think they're going to impress the girl, but that doesn't mean they're a horrible guy. So what is like the things that like you need to be looking for as a successful woman, like on Bumble or on something like that? Is there something in particular they need to be looking for other than just like that's an immature man, like it's fine, all men are immature? Or like what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I will tell you, there's absolutely ways that you can hack the algorithm or really get yourself to benefit the algorithm on any dating app by setting up your profile in a way that's actually going to really work in your favor.
Mm.
And a lot of the times it's not what people think it is. And guys are infamous for just thinking that they're being really cool. And I'm like, please
Please.
stop. Please, please make it stop. But yeah, I mean I think, just to start, it's really important for people to know that authenticity is never, ever, ever a bad thing. And I think it's social media dating apps, we have a really similar approach to it, unfortunately, which is that swipey, 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 scroll, scroll, scroll.
Mhm.
And so I really think that a really great starting point for people who want to amplify their dating app profiles or really up the quality a notch, and therefore increase their chances of finding matches or profiles that actually they're like, oh, I'm not traumatized. This is decent, or this I'm curious about this person, is to really focus on how you can amplify your own profile without it sounding performative, right? And to keep your authentic flavor in. Like people do want to learn about you, but they also want to learn about what makes you stand out in a sea of like hundreds of people who people are swiping on all the time.
Mhm.
And I think a really good attitude to have is that, dating is a numbers game. Like if you are online dating, it's going to be a numbers game. And I would love to tell you that it isn't. I would love to be politically correct and say that, sometimes you don't have to go on all these dates, but the reality is it's like Alex and Layla Hermosi, that's exactly what Layla did until she found
Mhm.
Alex. Like she was on it for months and she had a dating strategy, which was that hers was like, I'm going to swipe and swipe and swipe every day or every other day or until I find someone that I'm feeling like I'm connected to. And
Mhm.
it's actually not a bad approach. It's something that I teach my students as well. I have actually a little framework that I teach them, which can help them hack the app. So if you want more support around that, feel free to reach out to me. But I think starting with authenticity, reminding yourself that you do not have to be performative on dating apps to get people's attention, and then learning how to curate the apps depending on what platform you're on in a way to actually enhance the likelihood of people seeing your profile is one thing, and then increasing the quality of your matches. In my case, I help my students 2x to 4x their matches or the number of people that they're swiping on is a really great, I think, initial first strategy to use
Mm.
to look at how you can optimize using the apps. Because otherwise it can just kind of feel like you're, doom swiping. You're kind of just in that funk of like dating apps don't work and they suck. But if you know how to use them and if you learn how to really enjoy online dating with enough healthy attachment and detachment, it can actually work in your favor. I've
Yeah.
fallen in love twice, I would say,
Mm.
off of
Yeah,
apps,
and
which
if you go in
I
with
never
like,
thought would happen.
yeah, if you go in with it's not going to work for me, it's not going to work for you. Like you're going to see every reason why it won't work for you. But that's the same in
Yeah.
anything, right? So, oh my gosh, I'm so intrigued by all the online dating stuff. Okay, getting back on track. So I know you talked about attachment styles. So talk to me a little bit about attachment styles and what are some of like the common patterns that you see among these ambitious and high achieving women or men, honestly, that you are obviously my audience is mostly women, but what are the attachment styles and some of the common patterns that you're seeing among like high achieving women right now?
hmm Yeah, I love this question. I think one of the most common patterns that I'm seeing across high achieving men and women, and then I'll segue into especially women,
Hmm.
is I think a common between the two is that the utilization of time, right, is fascinating, has become a fascinating topic to me to discuss within the realms of attachment style because I look at high achieving men and women who are anxiously attached versus high achieving men and women who are avoidantly attached. And what's so interesting is that I feel like the high achieving men and women who are more anxiously attached actually are putting on more of a mask than the avoidant attachers, which is fascinating because in another world where you may not classify someone as a high achiever, it would actually be the opposite. It would mostly be you'd expect that with the avoidant attachers.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and I can absolutely say that a really big reason for that is because of the roles that we're playing, the hats that we're wearing. Especially if you look at founders, CEOs, women especially who are building, creating, thinking outside the box all the time,
Hmm.
needing to really exercise their analytical hats and their creative hats. And business is a great example for this, right? We would both know is like being multifaceted in that way can mean a lot of really wonderful things for us and our life and our standards and our bank accounts and our careers. And somewhere underneath that hides all these parts of you that you don't really intentionally want to hide. That's just hiding underneath there, just wanting to be heard and seen and expressed and just gets encapsulated by all the roles that you're playing. And then it's subconscious, but it becomes really easy to be able to wear a costume or multiple costumes without really intending to. And therefore, it's like there's a masking that goes on where attachment becomes something that isn't really revealed. Your attachment dysfunction or any gaps and areas in where you can really work on your attachment style until it's really looked at with like a microscope,
Hmm.
or like a really a really focal lens to be able to be like, okay, what can we actually shine the light on and illuminate here when it comes to your specific attachment style and how you're functioning in love? And it's also one of my most favorite areas to explore coaching in because it brings up so much for people who are in these really active roles
Hmm.
because sometimes we don't even realize, we have a lot of really brilliant ideas and a lot of things to execute. And we have these big dreams and these big plans, and we're doing things day in and day out, but we may not always be 100% conscious and aware of exactly where our blind spots are. And I do feel as though that is one of the main things that is really brought out in the attachment work with high achieving men and women, especially women and female, yeah, high achievers of all kinds. You could be a creative, a founder, you could be, a musician, you could be someone who's really highly visible, an influencer. The demand of the outside and external worlds um, is high. And
Hmm.
so, we've got to learn how to be able to juggle that and still have that and really just have everything inside of ourselves be okay. And then that is the inner work. And then I think with the other thing I would add is like with the men, what I what I'm seeing that's quite interesting is that it's actually healthy. I think a lot of the men are starting to really wake up to this idea of who am I outside of the archetype, the role, or the position that society's put me in within the context of relationships, right? And that could be your provider, your
Hmm.
protector, your whoever, but who am I outside of those roles? And that's a really big area that I explore with the men that I work with as well,
Hmm.
because they get to actually have a whole other world that's multidimensional for them that they haven't even explored. Whereas us women can do that by default a lot of the times.
Mm.
So it's interesting. Like the journey's slightly different,
Yeah.
but it would uncover different things when it comes to your attachment style and how you're operating. So yeah.
Yeah. I've never thought about that as far as like a man, the normal is like the provider or whatever, and that's kind of like what their normal role is. But then thinking outside of that, like who are you outside of that almost, I think would be a whole just identity shift within someone, especially as a man thinking. I feel like a lot of men grow up thinking that they have to be the provider, and that can cause, I'm sure, troubles in relationships and things like that too, when the woman is more the provider. But even if the man like still wants to be the provider, but just trying to figure out who he is outside of that, I could see that
Yeah.
bringing up all sorts of stuff. And it's always so intriguing to me too, just because I am raising two sons. So trying to, obviously, I'm a woman in business, and so I know that side of things, where it's like we are like, as women, we are coming up where we can be the women, the people at home, the moms, but we are also able to go out and be boss bitches. So we're able to have that. But then when you have that extra judgment where it's like the man's the provider, but if he is wanting to stay home, there's almost like this like judgment kind of thing too. So trying to figure out like who you are outside of that too. Huh.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. 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 And one thing I would add to that is I forgot to mention something that's so interesting about high achievers within, coaching in this realm of relationships and love also is the blend of just how much overlaps into work
Hmm.
and relationships and being able to separate that as well as the
Yeah.
learning process. Like logically, we might think that we're separating it, but so fascinating is a lot of the times your attachment style and how you're operating in relationships is kind of bleeding into or even from how you're dealing with things at work or
Mm.
in your company or whatever it is. And so it actually genuinely becomes a slightly different, more nuanced, more enhanced skill set to learn how to have and hold both when you are a high achiever. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. So true. Okay, so when we're looking at in my coaching, at least, I see a lot of women that tie their worth to their accomplishments, like whether or not they've accomplished something or whatever. So how do you see, with you working with like successful women and men, but how do you see achievement becoming like part of your identity? And when does that become almost like a problem? Like when they're tying their achievement to their identity and that becoming a problem within just their, I guess, relationships, but also just their life just in general.
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing that I could say off of the bat is I talked about being performative earlier in the context of
Hmm.
like maybe your dating profile or how you might be presenting yourself in your phone, right? And I really want to use that example because what happens very naturally when we are attaching our identity, a lot of the times our self-worth. A lot of high performers, a lot of high achievers, athletes, great example, will be primed to perform at a level, right? It's like you
Mhm.
have a threshold that you are building your capacity for a significant amount of your life, whether it's physical, athletic, intellectual, for something intellectual, whatever it is, it's like you are building a skill set as a knock-on effect for months and months and years and years and years and years and decades often
Mhm.
because you are wanting to create something that's meaningful and wonderful and that hopefully is lucrative, right? And gives back to you. And you're going big, like you're achieving something that is worth achieving to you. And so what happens that's a really common, I'm just going to call it a side effect, is because you can look at it like that, right? If we want to put it
Mhm.
in that terminology, is that we sometimes start blending these stories about our self-worth and our identity on performance and performing. And it's very external focused and it's very, if I don't do this, therefore that means I am not worthy of, and then insert blank. And then a lot of people think, well, maybe I don't have self-worth problems because I seem really confident. A lot of what we understand as confidence with high achieving humans is a lot of mask wearing. And it's not because you want to wear the mask, it's because you've had to be that person in order to achieve a certain outcome. You've
Mhm.
had to be the person that had to be emotionally resilient. You've had to be the person that gets up and still runs track because you have to be disciplined in order to achieve your athletic goals. Like you have to be that person that juggles 50 billion things, or like as we say, like be psychotic,
Yeah.
so that we can still have and hold, our lives and our careers without falling apart. But you're still actively playing all these roles and wearing all these hats, right? So there's an element of performatism that I think isn't spoken about a lot commonly, which is what happens when there are all these subtle masks that we do wear, not because we're trying to be fake or because we're
Mhm.
trying to be somebody that we're not, but because that's what the world needs of us in order for us to go out and still make bank and pay our bills, do what we need to do, survive and thrive, right? And so then it's just this exchange between identity and self-worth, basically.
Mhm.
And so the work that I see myself doing a lot of the times and that I've also done on myself with my mentors is like, where is that intersection? Where is it, you know? Is it that I'm coming from a scarcity pattern and
Mhm.
that, I'm coming into a place of, say, my money stories or, my mindset around money and income or how I'm functioning in love. Like all these things are actually really interwoven. Like love, money, sex, relationships are
Mhm.
actually all interwoven. A lot of people don't know that. And so the patterns that we're seeing in these areas often overlap. And so it's fascinating because it's like, where does that come from? You
Mhm.
know? And so that's a primary example I definitely will use is that performatism. A lot of us don't know where the fuck it even comes from outside of, hey, I just needed to be this person to fill a role to achieve a goal. And that's all I know about it. But underneath is all this conditioning that we're used to.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's difficult to like, it's kind of like I use this analogy like taking off a jacket. Sometimes it's like taking off a jacket and then putting it aside, and we forget that we've got to take the jacket off and put it aside,
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
order to look at all the functioning and look at the human underneath that, and then how are then we functioning in relationships? Because that can cause, I think definitely some unintentional blocks to
Mhm.
things like intimacy and compatibility, and really just uncovering layers that we need to look into to find and keep healthy love.
Yeah. And I mean, we build up, whether man, woman, like we build up this shell of ourselves almost to protect ourselves. I feel like when we are successful and when we are growing a business, because you have to deal, especially online, you have to deal with like social media and things like that. But even in person, like there's things where you got to be the tough one, you got to be the one in charge and all of that. And I can see how bringing that into a relationship, like if that's all you've ever known, kind of like what you were saying with someone who play sports or whatever. Like if they get injured, for instance, and they can never play football again, that's all they've ever known is football. So now it's like this figuring out who the hell they are. And I can kind of see that where it would be like that in the dating world, whereas if you were already a successful entrepreneur, already successful in your field, and then now you're trying to date. It's almost like getting down to the core of who you are actually and not dating the entrepreneur, but dating the human underneath the entrepreneur, if that makes sense, or
Mm,
underneath the successful person, whatever. Um, and I think that I could see how that would be hard to like release that because you're so used to being in that identity where, and I talk about this a lot too in my work, where it's like I have this identity, I have multiple different hats. Like I'm the identity of the pharmacist, I'm the identity of the mom, the wife, the business owner. Like I have all these different identities and all these different balls that I'm juggling at all at one time. And I could see how, especially like if you are trying to date and like releasing that control of the identity, the main identity you have, which is the successful person, I could see that as being difficult of trying to like find that person because in the
mhm.
beginning I would assume you're probably dating as the business owner, as the entrepreneur, as the corporate person, as like the boss bitch. Like you're dating as that person and not as who you truly are, if that makes sense at all. That's kind of how I
Yeah.
understood what you were saying. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I definitely think so. And you're on track with what you're saying. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you just gave some really great examples of yourself wearing different hats. And the way that I really understand it working with people is that it's not that it's always an intention
Mm-hmm.
to operate that way, but what a lot of people probably miss is that it becomes a lifestyle. Like it's not just about this is my identity. It's like that becomes a lifestyle. That is like who
Mm-hmm.
you are
Yeah.
in the some of the most important moments of your life. Like, are you ever going to go to an Olympian and say, like, hey, your medals don't matter and all this work that you've done to achieve everything that you've wanted to for decades and for all this time, like, is going to amount to nothing? Of course not, because
Mhm.
we have big visions. We want to be able to be on earth and live a life that's fulfilling.
Right.
And I think with high achievers, what separates a lot of us is that we want a deep interconnectedness between the fulfillment of life and fulfillment of career. Um, or, whatever it is that you choose to do in your career, or if it's running a business, and the same thing with love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why I have the three-pronged approach to the pathways that we go down when we're also working a lot with high-performing men and women, is because I don't really separate. Like love is one core unit, but I do not separate what's going on in your life and what's going on with your leadership, whether that's leadership, self-leadership, or leadership that you are responsible for out in the external world, because all of it ends up overlapping, kind of like a pretzel, right? It's like it kind of like tucks into each other
Mm-hmm.
because it becomes the identity and the lifestyle and the way of being, and you're functioning in that all the time,
Yeah.
right? And so how are you supposed to have all of that figured out by yourself? But how you put it, I think, was really beautiful about capturing what's underneath that, of the human underneath that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So have you seen women, like successful women, use this ambition as a way to like avoid a vulnerability or like this emotional intimacy?
Absolutely, I was her.
You're talking
So
about me right
yes.
now.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Like what is the root underneath all of that? Are they just using it as a cover up so that way they don't have to experience the emotional intimacy or what's behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that for a lot of women, 100% it is a self-protection mechanism. I know for that it was for me. For some people, if they're using it as a cover-up, which yes, again, a number of women do that. I do see women with more manipulative tendencies underneath that. That's a slightly different conversation, because this is when we're kind of going into like toxic wounding territory, and but it absolutely exists. I warn the men that I work with and my male friends to stay away from women like this. But I truly believe that outside of the protective layers,
Mhm.
or even just like the protective front or defense mechanisms that we can put on to protect ourselves from being too vulnerable, getting hurt, um, is the other side of the reality of learning how to actually experience safe, healthy love,
Mhm.
because it's really common to wear an armor without realizing it. And I think what's happened with the internet is that people are becoming more aware of attachment styles and have some awareness of it, and they're thinking that maybe it's because someone has avoided attachment that they're doing this.
Mhm.
And I will happily tell you, I've worked with women with anxious attachment who are very high functioning. A number of them have, for example, ADHD. They're on the neurodivergent spectrum. And you will not guess ever that they have anxious attachment because they don't carry themselves that way. They don't speak like they do. They don't have the mannerisms. And they're not trying to mask. It's just that sometimes, yeah, it is the ADHD masking for them, or it's the fact that they're not switching the role that they're playing
Mhm.
after working, a 40-hour week or 50-hour
Right.
week or whatever, and then going into their personal lives in the weekend or coming into a coaching session where it's like, oh, I finally get to take this jacket off now and
Hmm.
just kind of like exhale into the
Yeah.
human I am underneath it. And a lot of the times, like, people aren't really having those conversations, right? You're having conversations with your family and your friends. And yes, it's amazing to be able to have those conversations, but what about the conversations about what the human underneath is experiencing and what you can uncover, right?
Hmm.
And so I think there's that element to it too, honestly, is like the protection mechanism, the armor we want to wear because we don't want to get hurt. And underneath that, a really common denominator is how can we actually learn to feel completely safe and love? Because when we learn how to be that way, when we learn how to attract that, when we learn how to function that way, and it is a learning process, that's when I see women it's almost like this energetic blueprint that just opens up in their life and they get to receive a lot too. And that in itself is a practice, and that's something I've had to learn how to do. It's still a constant practice for me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and it's beautiful what it opens up. I
Yeah.
actually just posted a podcast episode, I think it was last week, about one of my more recent alumni students who did exactly this, was like she literally went from like a toxic relationship to recovering from a breakup to finding a new partner and then having a six-figure life with a six-figure income in like 4 months.
Mm.
And like I can't make that up, you know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like she just messaged me the other day and I sent her a meditation track and I was like, "Hey, I think you should listen to this. I feel like your pre-daydreams about, your future life in another country is gonna really like benefit from these tunes, these bagpipes or whatever." And I was joking about it. And then she woke up the next day and messaged me and was like, "Hey, I just manifested a free trip to Fiji." And I was like, "Of course you have."
Of course you did. Of course you did.
And so it's I think for women it's such a beautiful experience to let yourself go there because what you end up uncovering is more than just feminine energy and your
Hmm.
feminine essence. It's like your whole world outside of everything you knew opens up, and your relationship with men, your relationships, sorry, plural, with men change forever. It's the most beautiful thing to experience and watch, and just has this beautiful knock-on effect
Hmm.
that, yeah, it's just so cool. So,
I love that. And you were on, like, I was going to talk about feminine energy really quick, kind of to wrap it up a little bit. So we are right on track. You like said it right before I did with the feminine energy. So with that, I feel like me personally, I definitely embody more of like this masculine energy. I'm very like hustle, no bullshit, like go, go, go. I am getting into more of my spiritual woo, feminine type, manifesting type energy right now as well. But I feel like, especially when I started even even now like to have this relationship with my husband, which we have an amazing relationship, but and he's used to my hustle crazy ass. But but I feel like a lot of women, especially if you're a successful woman, you come in with like this more of this masculine energy. And for me, it was kind of like releasing that mask and allowing myself to have this feminine energy. But I don't know. I know feminine energy is a big buzzword. And you talked about it a little bit, but how do you personally define feminine energy and what do people misunderstand the most about feminine energy?
mm, I think the first thing I can say off the bat to you, and something that I'm very mindful actually that I'm disclaiming to my clients and my students, because I had no idea how much of a impact that it was leaving on the internet was, I think, a lot of people's understanding because of how it's presented and
Hmm.
spoken about on social media about feminine energy is that it's like a aesthetic. It's like, for example, you could have archetypes behind this. You could have a trad wife who's baking the sourdough and the quiche, and
Right.
she could be, someone's representation of the internet of what a very feminine woman with feminine energy represents. Or you could really have someone who um, is really like a seductress who's very into like, talking about her yoni and her tantra practices, and she's in the spiritual community, and that again could be like an
Yeah.
aesthetic or an archetype representation of feminine energy on the internet.
Hmm.
And one thing I really encourage people to um, try and open their minds to is that the way that I define feminine energy, especially in the realms of love, is that feminine energy, the essence of it is about a woman returning back to her life force. It is about a female returning back to what makes her innately, purely, and wildly herself, and therefore feminine, because you cannot escape the actual feelings and sensations and the energetics and the embodiment of what it means to be truly feminine if you're not coming back to that. And when I see women come back into their bodies, into their essence, their life force energy, that's when I see the changes in how they're communicating, representing themselves, how they're receiving emotions,
Hmm.
how they're allowing themselves to feel things they've never felt before. And really importantly, how they're then taking that experience that they're feeling inside of themselves, healing, alchemizing, and then bringing that to men, right? And presenting that to men because women, in my eyes, are the natural born leaders. Like we lead.
Hmm.
And I see men following a lot of the times, right?
Hmm.
So we're doing this dance, and so then we get into again these ideas of role playing and archetypes of absolutely men are providers, protectors, 100%. But when you're talking about a female's essence, it's more than just the aesthetic that you see and understand on social media. It is about her lived experience every day. And it's possible to be the boss babe and be in your power, right? And have that come from your life force and your feminine essence and achieve wonderful things and still come back into your body and allow yourself to be feminine and have incredible relationships with men. And that's what men crave a lot of the times. It's just really hard to, I think, put it into words a lot of the times, right? Because it's an experience.
Hmm.
But yeah, but it's so powerful once each and every unique woman learns how to embody it within herself because so much, like I said, in her life opens up.
Yeah. I feel like you just gave me such permission because what I understand from this is that like my boss bitchness can be feminine like that because that's like who I am. Like that's not an act, that's not a play. It's just that's me. And that can be like who I am is feminine. Like I don't have to wear, I mean, I love to wear a good dress, but I don't have to wear the dress or like prance around like a fairy like they have on social media and all of this. Like I can just be me. And by me just being me, from what I'm understanding, like that's feminine. Like that's like me embodying my feminine power. And I feel like everybody's femininity and like feminine energy and feminine power, like it's all gonna look different. And I do think based off of what you say, like it's social media gives such, and I fell victim to it too, obviously, but social media gives such a different representation of what that is. But I didn't even think about the different like archetypes that's out there where you do see like the people cooking sourdough and that's feminine. And you see the other people that are just home with the kids and that's feminine. And then you see that like there's so many different ways that people project feminine energy and try to push that off. So what would you say, I guess last question around the feminine energy is what would you say that feminine energy like looks like in real life versus on Instagram? Is it what I was saying, where
Mm,
it's just more embodying who you are as a woman, as a human, like who you are, or is there something else that's attached to that?
I think it's honoring, accepting, honoring, accepting, and embodying in your entire truth of being a woman.
Mm.
All of it. Like everything that it means to be a woman. Your cycle, the tears, the 53 emotions, the some days not even having like an emotion to dissect. Um, like water, right? It's like actually one of the best ways someone had ever described feminine energy to me was like, it's like, don't you think women are like water? It's just we're just like we're like waves, you know? And then like the intensity of the waves, well, yeah, sure, like that depends on what's going on. You know
Depends
what
on the
I mean?
day, depends on the week.
Depends
Yeah.
on the day, yeah. But I think to like to give people a visual, I do think femininity is a lot like water. It's really about learning how to be in flow and not I think the magic is honestly, I've been doing a lot of this work myself. It's like it's like this pull energy. Like there's push energy and then there's pull energy. And I think with our boss babes, we struggle with the pull energy
Mm.
because it's natural to go into that more masculine push energy. There's a way of balancing both that I think really keeps you in embodiment,
Mm.
right? Because
Mhm.
it's okay to go back and forth between the two. And then I think to answer your question, I would probably say in the real world, outside of social media, um, if there was like a visual and energetic representation of when I think a female is truly in her feminine, is how okay she is with imperfection and being liberated.
Mm.
Like, do you feel free? Do you feel free and liberated in your life outside of what you're seeing online? Because that to me is like the ultimate goal. And that to me is like an ultimate value of mine when I feel like I'm in my feminine essence is how free am I feeling out in the world and on the day to day. And I think it's a good marker, but one that's sometimes like kind of hard to come to, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, those two things.
Wow. That was so I literally have chills right now. That I'm going to I
Oh,
know it's my podcast and I'm doing it in real time, but I feel like once I put this upload it, I need to go re-listen to the last like 20 or like 10 minutes because oh my God, I've never thought of feminine energy in that way, right? For it's just never been in that way. And women are freaking amazing. We're freaking awesome. Like that's the thing that I kept repeating in my head as you were saying. I'm like, yeah, we're pretty awesome. We're the natural born leaders. We got our shit. Like we have the whole package. Like that is I don't know. That is just something the way I don't know if it was the way that you were saying it or what you were saying. It just like it hit me right in the feels. It got me in my emotions. So I am obsessed with all of that. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm definitely going to go back and re-listen to that because that was incredible. Um,
you're
I
so
guess
welcome.
I guess wrapping it up, what advice would you give the woman who's building a business or chasing big dreams and wondering if she has to choose between success and love? Like what would be the biggest advice for that woman right now?
Mm, First of all, I feel you in my soul. I really started to grow a passion for helping the woman who wants to be able to hold success and love and be in success and love, be the present being that you really want to be in success and love. And I want you to know that if you are sitting there and have ever felt like, or are currently feeling like, sometimes I just wish somebody would see me more. I wish men would see me more. I wish I felt seen more. I wish I felt held more. Or if you just at the end of the day or week sometimes just want to come and collapse into the arms of the man of your dreams or your husband if you're not single or your partner, whoever. I want you to know that you can have and hold both and do it in a way where you're not feeling like you have to a shrink because you don't have to. That's the truth of it. You don't have to shrink. But I think most importantly, where you're not feeling like all these parts of you have to give, like all these like different parts of you that sometimes feel conflicted on the inside, like something always has to give.
Mm-hmm.
because there's a way of creating it. Um, I call it like the architecture almost of like your love, like the operative architecture of your love. Like if you thought about love as like an operating system, like you can sound like a computer,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something in my program that I teach in the high achievers section of it, which is called your love operating system. And so if you think about how you're operating and your operating system as a female, as a woman, as a femme going through the world, wanting to build your passion, wanting to have this incredible career, and also feeling like I want to have love that's even greater
Mm-hmm.
or as great. Like, you do not have to drop one or the other of the standards.
Mm-hmm.
Both things can rise in parallel. It's just about finding out how to do it and how to do it in a way that is actually going to work for you without you having to lose yourself, shrink yourself, or just I think compromise on your authenticity and who you are. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
we don't do self-abandonment around here,
No, we
and
don't.
I think it's really easy to sometimes find ourselves in that position
Yeah.
when we're trying to go through this like maze of life, right? And I think every woman probably listening to this has at some point done that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so it's just a little journey that we go on, and I'm here if you want more support.
Perfect. Well, with that being said, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the audience? Anything that's coming up that you'd like to talk to them about right now? I can put all the links in the show notes. The floor is yours, my friend.
Well, I think the only thing I would share before, yeah, I talk a little bit about where you can find me is that, you brought up earlier in the conversation about women sometimes feeling like they have to, or maybe they naturally avoid vulnerability or intimacy or emotional intimacy, right? And I talked about the armor and, wearing the different hats. And one thing that I didn't mention was that I think a lot of the times what also happens is that we get used to feeling like we have to keep everything together and therefore have to ringlead a lot and have to come up with the solutions a lot and therefore have to fix. And so I wanted to talk about fixing for a second because I think the one area of your life that you probably want to fix is maybe your love life or your dating life. And it's actually the one area of your life that I would really healthily challenge you to look at almost switching that word up with, again, like instead of feeling like you have to fix it, how can you open yourself up to having both, having it all, and feeling more liberated? Because when you start to focus on your journey as a journey to go on to feel more liberated, there's a lot of space that can open up that is you priming yourself, you getting ready to call in everything that you've been subconsciously blocking yourself from having and receiving. And that is some like bomb diggity magical Harry Potter shit. Like that's
Harry
like
Potter
some
shit.
that's
Speaking
some
my
top tier shit
language.
right there. That's yeah, that's like honestly, that's the creme de la creme. That's like the top shelf.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
top shelf experience, yeah, that we want to have in love, and it's so possible. So yeah, so it's so possible for you.
Yes, that's amazing. Oh, thank you. Is there anything that's coming up that you want to talk about right now? I know you were talking about your program. Is there anything that I know, like podcast, all of that? Pimp
Yeah,
yourself
well, I
out, my
mean,
friend.
I host a weekly podcast. It's called the Big Life Podcast, and I'm sure Paige will leave the
Yes.
details in the show notes as always. But yeah, if you want to come hang out on Instagram, that's where I spend most of my time. So come and say hi, send me a DM if you want to come and chat about anything, but especially if you want to come chat about your love life. And I actually have a upgraded version of my program that launches at the end of July, coming up early October. So we're going to be in a really exciting launch phase very soon. So yeah, stay tuned for that if that's something that interests you or perhaps some curiosity. And I'll be around if you want to come and say hi and chat.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Arneen. This was amazing. So, thank you for joining me today. If you guys love this episode, please make sure that you share it to your stories with your takeaways and your favorite part. You can tag me and Arneen. I'm sure I'm going to share it to my stories. I'm sure Arneen would do the same, at least like have a conversation. I love to see who's listening. I love to see what you guys love most about the episode, all of the things. So make sure you do that. And I think that's it. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for being here again, Arnie. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys next week. Love you. Bye.